Hello and welcome back to Beyond a Podcast. This is our season 2 premiere. It's been a long awaited with your hosts, Lauren Killy
Hi.
and myself, Jack Butwhistle. It's been a long hiatus, 6 months, a little bit more than 6 months now.
Yeah, a bit over 6 months. Been
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah. So we've taken a little bit of time to, we had a lot of things happening and then got away from us, and we've decided to invest in setting up our own podcast setup here at home so we can get more episodes to you guys more frequently with topics of conversation we want to talk about, and hopefully with some pretty cool guests in the future.
That's the goal. So welcome home, everybody.
Welcome to our home. Yeah, exactly. So this is our sofa. We've designed it so that Lauren sits as far away as me as possible because otherwise hands get swung
And stuck into the corner so I can't restlessly move all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
she's also got a perfectly upright back, which her coach, hopefully James, will not get pissed off about. But I'm sure he'll have a problem with how she sat.
I'm trying. Okay, I'm trying.
At least it's not on the floor upside down.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So we thought this first episode of season 2 would be an opportunity to recap 2023, our lessons, what happened, where we're at. And then from there, we'll start bringing in some more education, some more guests, and some more of the topics that you all want to hear.
Yeah. So, last 6 months, we've got a lot to catch up on. It's been a lot of things have happened in the last 6 months.
Yeah, our whole lives have changed, to be quite honest, because the last episode we did, we were just coming into August. We were just coming into what was the Worlds WBFF show and our trip to Vegas.
I think you're about like 4 weeks out at the time.
Yeah.
On the last episode that we uploaded.
Mm.
Yeah. So, so you were in prep for Vegas.
Yep.
That was your, so that prep you started quite short, right? How it was like 16 weeks out?
It was a 16-week show because, as I'm sure a lot of you listeners already know, the intention was to do the show at the end of the year in December instead in Atlantic City, but bunch of stuff happened, change your mind, 16 weeks out, we decided, screw it, let's go for Worlds in Vegas.
Why did you change your mind? Why did you change shows?
Well, the dream, God, and we'll get into this, but the dream was to be a world WBFF fitness champion. And obviously part of the way that you become a world champion is you've got to get to that standard and that level. You're going to tease me for the way I said champion then. I can see you laughing. And I needed to get that judge's feedback. Now, I'd done the London show prior, come second, which was absolutely amazing, but that was in a much smaller show. I'd done the Australian show as well, where I had come fifth. So I didn't quite know where I would stand on a world stage and with the pros that were competing at Worlds. So after a lot of debate between myself and Jack and my coach James, we thought, well, why not just go for it and get that really good feedback and see where we do stand? Because we might do worse than we think, we might do better than we think, but at least it allows us to know where we do sit and how far we have to go. The feedback from London was that I was what they wanted for fitness, but my feedback from Australia was you need more size. So it was kind of a little bit of conflicting information there. So we thought, well, let's just go do this show. It's an incredible experience anyway. I'd never been to the States. Jack and I had never been to Vegas, so it just gave us, something new to do as well. And then it meant I competed sooner. I could get back into a off season and recovery sooner and get into building sooner rather than waiting till the end of the year, getting feedback, then having to wait another 6 months to get to Worlds to potentially get the same feedback anyway.
Yeah, and we were very lucky in the fact that we made that choice because
Oh, God. So there was some awful events that did happen at that WBFF World. I don't want to go into too much detail, but unfortunately,
essentially there's not going to be another WBFF Worlds that's worth competing at.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right. I think it's important to note and to honor the fact that there was an athlete there who did pass away, Rich Henderson, and it was not handled well. The whole situation was not handled well. So that was kind of the catalyst for a lot of things that did come out. Basically, in short, because of what did come out, a lot of athletes realized they weren't being looked after as they should, and the brand wasn't caring for them as it should be. So a lot of people boycotted WBFF. And because of what did come out, especially obviously with the handling of the situation around Rich and what came out about photoshopping and falsifying athletes' bodies, which really,
Without consent.
without consent, which is the really important piece there, it went against my values so much. I couldn't, in good conscience, keep my pro card. So it was in September of 2023 that I. Yeah, I'm gonna get emotional. Oh no. It was in September of 2023 that I gave up my pro card that obviously I'd worked a long time to get. And with that, I essentially had to give up my dream of becoming a world champion in WBFF, something I'd been chasing for a decade. And we'd built our business around WBFF. Obviously, we're comp prep specialist coaches, and we've always coached to all federations. But we'd always solely put our focus into WBFF. So it was a really terrifying time for both of us because Jack, bless him, stood beside me in that decision. And we decided together that we weren't going to continue to support the WBFF brand. And by making that decision, which aligned with our values, we were essentially risking our business falling apart, losing clients, not knowing what we were going to be able to do with our career in the future. And then obviously from the competing side, I didn't know what I was going to do. I'd been working towards that goal for so long. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt utterly lost, to be quite honest. So that was a really tough time.
Yeah. Yeah, you were really struggling with that whole time. It was like 2 weeks of more and more stuff coming out about um how athletes have been treated, stuff that this is the funny thing is this stuff had been going on for absolutely years. And what happened at Worlds with the amateur competitor Richard passing away was the catalyst and the snowball that meant that some people that worked directly for them, worked at that show, spoke out, had the bravery to speak out finally, because we've known about some unsavory things within the brand. We've heard of. We don't know firsthand. We've heard of things from people being mistreated by people, but it was never our personal experience. And you always wonder whether these stories are just from bitter people that have not been successful. Um, and obviously, as more and more stuff coming out, more and more evidence, screenshots, screen grabs of communication between people, it became, it came to light that all the stories that we had heard were absolutely true. Um, and yeah, it was just like I always had a funny feeling.
You
I always had
did,
a
you
funny
did.
feeling about
Mm.
the brand, the federation, how you can kind of sense that wasn't set up with athletes in mind. It was always set up with the brand in mind first, and their success and their what makes them look good and what makes their brand look good on social media. It was never set up with like, how is this going to benefit the athlete? How is this going to benefit their experience? Is this something that someone can do ongoing, um, in terms of like the financial investment that people have to make? Um, personally, we've invested a lot of money into Lauren's competing, which is, you know, I think the thing is, a lot of people were afraid to speak out because a lot of people have built up their own businesses, their income around that brand, and so a lot of people were afraid to say anything about the impact it might have on their career, on their business, on their livelihood. And so, those few people that spoke out following what happened, it created that snowball effect of everyone else being able to have the courage to speak out. Because the funny thing in these situations is it only works when everyone does work together, because it's so hard feeling like, you're an amateur competitor who's got this weird message from the owner of WFF and it seems a bit seedy, but you're not sure. And you don't know who would you say that to, and who would take it seriously, and who would be like, are you just doing it for attention and all this stuff. So I was every time something came out, I was on the opposite end. Lauren was struggling a lot emotionally because of obviously the ties that she's created, the emotional ties that you've created over the years and tied to that business and that brand and the dreams. But for me, I was like, fucking yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that more people shared. And the funny thing is, I know there's still more stuff out there that wasn't shared. And I wish it was. I wish it was public. And I think, there's still people that were still worried about how that might impact their brand and there was a lot of people out there that were very tactical about how they handled the situation out of fear of, like, I guess, alienating themselves or whatever. But I'm really happy that on the back end of this, one thing that we've always said is, like, WBFF Australia has always been a better experience for the athletes. They've always done that little bit more within the realms in which they were allowed to do, because there were certain things that weren't their control, like, how the shows, how the judging is done in terms of its overall, like, marking capacity. They had scorecards which the US shows didn't, which is always, that's good. That was a positive thing. But they were still working within the criteria that was given to them by the federation, which to me, in my mind, was always incredibly overly vague. And I think it was done on purpose so that they could pick a winner based on things outside of, hard work, merit, fitting to the criteria, whether that be social media influence, whether that be um, some, like, other kind of branding idea that they've got. And that was the thing about the WBFF, is it started to feel less and less like a, I know they always said like I said this on the podcast, it's a pageant for people who lift,
Mm.
rather than a bodybuilding competition with more focus on individuality and expression, which is what I think it should be. So the new federation, FMG, fitness, muscle and glamour,
Hmm.
um, they've changed their judging criteria, so it's now 70% physique, 30% is overall stage presence,
And there's
and
no marketability, which was a past judging criteria in
which was
WBFF.
incredibly vague.
Yes, and now obviously, as Australia has always had scorecards, that's going to be very clear, and it does have the athlete in mind, which I will say, because I've done 17 comps now, and the vast majority of those were in Australia. So my experience at the Australian shows was always amazing, and that's why I fell in love with it, and that's why I stayed with WBFF for so long, because of my experience in the Australian shows. And it was only when we started getting overseas, and especially at Worlds, that I found myself. Yeah, the idea of it was kind of a little bit tainted, and the rose-colored glasses started to come
Yeah,
off.
before even anything happened, there were some
Mm.
things that happened in the lead up to World. So for those that don't know, so Lauren competed last November,
No, it was November. November.
November 5th, in London. She competed in fitness in London against Hattie, and there was one other fitness pro, right, in
Yes,
that show,
Laura.
Laura,
Yes, all the
right?
Aussies.
All the Aussies went over there, obviously versing Hattie Boydell, who's one-time fitness world champion, right, back in the day. Obviously has an amazing physique, a lot of muscle, a lot of experience, and she's Hattie. She's got incredible energy on stage.
Oh, she's phenomenal.
You came second to Hattie. Your feedback from that show, from the judges, from the individual judges, was that you were phenomenal. Your muscle was pretty much where it needed to be. There was a little bit of feedback about bringing up your glutes, bringing up your hamstrings. They didn't want you any more conditioned. One person just said, it was toe to toe. It was just a very good Hattie on the day, and that was kind of your feedback from that show. And then to get proper guidance coming into Worlds, to get guidance from Paul and Alison Dillette on what to do coming into Worlds, because if anyone doesn't know about Worlds, it's like a 5-day event.
Yes.
You got media day,
Registration,
night,
the
you've got a show,
shows, which run over
2
2
shows. Yeah,
days.
so it's a 4-day event. And media day, essentially you're getting judged from the moment that you get there all the way through to show day, and obviously when in the evening. And that means literally from when you walk in the door in the host hotel.
The moment we arrived, we had to make sure I was dressed to the nines and wearing my sash the second I walked into the casino, just in case we bumped into anyone, because it's things like that that matter. And we even found that someone got an award for the best dressed upon arrival at the casino on one of the events. So you really had to be ready to fight from the moment you got there. So it
Yeah.
was a big trip. It was exhausting.
It was a big event. Media day had a theme that, and obviously apparently that made a massive difference to things. So ensuring that you're well dressed for media day, well dressed for Rego night. There was 2 registrations. There was pre-registration, there
Mm.
was evening registration. So you have
Yes.
to have 2 different dresses for that.
It was
Right?
recommended. Yes.
Everything is always recommended. Nothing ever is said out explicitly. It was always
Mm.
like, this will help, this will benefit. We look better on people that do this.
Mm.
There was a lot of insinuation about things that you should do and will benefit you in terms of your placing on the day, right? Um, and that was all the stuff that was kind of insinuated kind of coming into it. There were certain rules that were expected for you to follow. You had to stay at the host hotel was extravagant but not tailored towards bodybuilding athletes that need to prep food on the day. The room had the smallest fridge possible, no kitchenette, nothing like that. So what we had to go and buy
We went and bought a
a
microwave from
microwave
the Target and
from the Target.
Ubered to Target, got a microwave, Ubered back, snuck it into the hotel in a suitcase.
Yeah, because apparently you're not
You're
even
not
allowed to
allowed.
bring in
Mm.
outside electrical goods into the
Mm.
hotel because they have to be safety tested.
Mm.
So, like in terms of an athlete on prep for a week, trying to making sure you peak yourself, that in itself
It
is
is
incredibly
challenging.
difficult. And you're in a foreign country, in the middle of Vegas, it's already hard enough. And then there's
Mm.
nowhere for you to go shopping and then store that food.
Yeah.
So, we're having to go out several times a day to keep getting stuff, getting Uber
Yes.
Eats
Yeah.
to deliver to the hotel to try and get fresh food.
Pre-cooked rice, pre-cooked chicken in the microwave. Some
Yeah,
athletes would bring like cooking things and cook their food in the bathrooms themselves. Everyone kind of handles it in their own way,
yeah.
don't they?
But that's not set up at
No.
all with athlete in mind. And you have to stay at the host hotel, and they check.
Yes.
They check who has paid and booked and stayed at the host hotel, which is incredibly expensive in the first place. So you've got to be really willing to invest a lot of money into that. Obviously, the flights, the hotel, the obviously the different dresses. Any females out there, how much dresses are, and for you to find something that's both individual, unique, suits the themes, looks good on you, that you can travel with.
Yes.
Uh,
It's also traveling with these things. We ended up having to buy extra luggage because just we could not get everything to fit in the
no,
bag. I do want to like jump in and quickly say here, I was so lucky and so blessed with the media day that the beautiful Stepanka Anderson actually sponsored that gown for
yeah,
me, and she made the most incredible transforming dress, which was actually Jack's idea, based off of Blake Lively's transforming dresses from one of the Met Galas in
yeah,
previous years, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So I
yeah.
have to say a huge thank you to Stepanka for that.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was a really beautiful dress, and it was really cool to see that. To try and hit both themes. Breakfast at Tiffany's and the black dress was
Mini
really
black
cool.
dress. Yeah.
So in terms of that, it's just a lot. And then there was also things kind of leading up, like Lauren's coach had heard through the grapevine that they wanted specific things shown on social media. They didn't want to see so much educational content from from the athletes coming into Worlds. There was even at one point where it was like, you should be going and getting photos dressed up in pink for the Barbie movie because that's pop culture at the moment. There was all these little things where it was almost controlling the narrative of what you put out on social media to give yourself an edge. And it's like I I feel dirty having done that.
Mm.
Having I didn't even do anything, but like having to, to to
Retrospect is a
yeah,
funny thing. Obviously, when you're in something and you're chasing a dream, we do describe it as the rose-colored glasses. And I'm not the only athlete who's felt like this. I know there was many who were kind of in it, and you had a feeling of this doesn't quite feel right. But it's not until you take a step back that you actually think, wow, no, these things aren't okay. So when everything started to come out, I think a lot of athletes started to realize that there was a lot that they were being pushed to do for a result, and it wasn't with their benefit at mind. So a lot of people did boycott the federation basically and separate from it. Now WBFF is still running, but it's not something we choose to support anymore. We were very lucky that Pauline and Ari were able to separate because they have always looked after the athletes,
yeah,
and they created FMG. So the first show will be here in Australia in April, and they do have shows all around the world. So obviously, we're going to be there with our team. We're really excited about it. We've got a few girls prepping for that first show, and we've got girls prepping for the Pro AM at the end of the year. We've got all the well, God, they've done so well. They've got shows in Mexico and the States. They've got shows
Yeah,
in
they've attacked it.
London. Like yeah, it's amazing. So it's been incredible to see that come to fruition.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people will have seen all over social media. A lot of the pros who were within WBFF and decided to boycott have had their pro status carried over to FMG. When I decided to give up my pro status because I could no longer, I couldn't represent the brand of WBFF anymore, I felt quite torn because I'd earned it here in Australia and I'd earned it under Ari and Pauline. So I didn't quite necessarily feel I hadn't been as attached to the overseas stuff, but I still couldn't tie my name to it. So what a lot of people don't know is before I made that announcement, I had spoken to Pauline and Ari, and I had told them that that was the decision I was going to be making, and they were so beautiful about it, and they were so kind and so supportive. And they did say to me really beautifully that if I wanted to come back, I could, and I could have my pro status back basically at that point. Now, what happened after that is um, during the mess when, God, there was a good few days there where I'll be honest, severely depressed, struggling to get up out of bed, and I was a mess.
You're a burrito
I was a burrito.
wrapped up in
I
bed.
was a burrito. There's still a lot of emotions tied to that time because it was not only giving up a dream, giving up my pro card I'd worked so hard for, but it was the betrayal and the heartbreak that came from it. It was the realizations. It was the another thing people don't know is to do that world show. I invested my life savings. I gave up everything. So I felt like I'd wasted my life savings and all the other time, sacrifices, and money I'd invested over the last decade because I lost relationships, I lost friendships. There's a lot that I sacrificed for prep when chasing this dream. And it's worth it. And I will say, like, to achieve your dream, it is still worth it. But because of what had happened, I felt like all of that it was a waste of 10 years of my life. So that was a really, really hard thing to battle with. We were given the opportunity of, it was 4 weeks after all of this stuff had started to happen, and we'd had the big breakdowns, and we were also battling our team as well. Some people, they weren't sure what was going to happen. We weren't sure if the shows here in Australia were going to go ahead. So we had our team, in the
Yeah.
middle of their preps freaking out.
And the thing is, like, when Lauren gave up her pro card, she was then removed from the pro chat, obviously in Facebook. So we had no idea what was going to happen with WBFF FMG,
Mm.
and so
We
we
were
didn't know what the contract was going to be like. Whether they would be able to separate. We had no inside knowledge into that. So you were looking forward at like how you going to progress in terms of your bodybuilding career going forward, right?
Oh yeah, I was just lost because like Jack knows this. The one thing I want to achieve in my life is to become the best in the world or to stand on the stage with the best in the world in competing. That's what I want for my life, and I'm willing to make a lot of sacrifices for that. So I was like, what now? I was lost. So 4 weeks from that point, there was a IFBB state show. And honestly, up until this point, I'd never considered IFBB really. Like throughout my journey, I hadn't thought about it as an option for me. When I began competing, I wanted WBFF, and then I got into it, and that was just where my focus stayed, was becoming a WBFF world champion. So, I had a chat to coach, and incredibly receptive and looking into things like that as well, because obviously he was going through the battles of supporting all of the other clients in the team and what they were going to do with their journeys, because he was also along with us in the sense that he was no longer supporting WBFF, rightly so. And so we decided, well, why not just do it? Because to be honest, I'm I'm going to break down again. At that time in my life, I needed something. I really needed something because I was so lost. And we just thought it was an amazing opportunity to give it a go, see if I liked it, see if it was for me, whilst we were kind of lost and not knowing what
Yeah,
direction to go in.
waiting to see what happened, because
Yes.
nothing had happened yet. Like
No.
obviously a bunch of this stuff had come out from WBFF about WBFF, entertainment, but there was radio silence
Yes.
from WBFF Australia. They couldn't say anything
No.
legally. They were tied into contracts. The one thing that they did obviously say is that they were going to donate proceeds of the ticket sales to Rich's family, which is
Yes.
beautiful,
Yeah.
which was amazing. I mean, the show was still like 2-3 months away.
Yeah, at
It's a
this
long,
point,
long,
yes,
long
the
time away,
Australian
right?
show. Mm.
Um, and so they were like, we'll get through this first show and then we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Lauren had no idea whether they were gonna
Because I was
what they were
going
gonna
to
do.
compete, which people don't know as well. I was going to get back on stage in bikini
Yeah, when we
after Worlds.
first got back, you were like, "Oh, I might do a bikini. I might do a bikini at the end of the year," and I
Yeah.
was about to throttle her.
He was so sick of me being in prep.
Oh, fucking hell am I? Yeah, I'm still sick of it. So don't go back
Yeah.
yet.
You need to
Um,
break.
yeah, we need a break. So yeah, you were gonna do that show, and then the stuff started coming up about WBFF entertainment, and the thing like this is the thing about this stuff is like we've been tied to that name for so long. Lauren herself had been tied to that name for so long, and there was so much happening over in the US, and there was just no one in Australia, no pros in Australia were speaking up about anything. Everyone was just saying, WF Australia is different. It's different. It's all good. Like everything's fine. Australia is different. It's terrible what they're doing overseas, but it's different.
Mm,
I'm like, but it's still WBFF. It's still Paul Dillette's WBFF, and still proceeds of that show go to Paul and Alison Dillette.
mm,
And the Australian registration costs previously all Australian pro costs, the registration fee,
mm.
all goes to Paul and Alison Dillette at that time. It wasn't until Ari came out and said that they're going to donate the proceeds of the ticket sales to Rich Henderson family, and that they're going to keep those costs in Australia. But that was like 3-4 weeks after it happened. It took a while for anything to happen around that.
Yeah, and
Um,
because of that silence, and not knowing what was going on, I also I obviously before I gave up the pro card, I was going to compete in bikini, but I didn't want anything going to Paul and Allison. It wasn't just the money. I couldn't represent it. And that's the thing by choosing to compete, even though obviously it would have been competing in Australia and it would have been competing on the Australian stage, I still would have had to have worn the sash and walked around as a WBFF pro. And I just couldn't do it anymore.
yeah,
So that's why we decided, okay, I'm going to because I spoke to Jack about it a lot as well, and my coach. I was like, "No, I'm going to give up
yeah,
that pro card, and we're going to like we have up and we always will continue to support Pauline and Ari in other ways. We obviously bought tickets to the show, went to the show, brought our girls to the show.
yeah.
We'll
Normally,
always support.
normally, obviously, as a pro, Lauren gets a ticket, and then we normally you sometimes even get a +1 if you've competed the
Yes, for
previous year,
free.
right?
Yeah.
Instead, you gave a pro card. We bought tickets. We encouraged our girls to continue to compete with them.
Mm,
Like we continue to support that business. It's just that for our value, one of the big values for us is integrity,
mm,
and continuing to push towards a brand that hasn't shown any integrity towards their athletes, any respect towards their athletes. I mean, there were some of the messages that were said were so fucking degrading and so misogynistic
yeah.
from Paul about the girls.
It was quite awful,
Um,
but we won't go into that.
well, I don't care but anyway, I would. But regardless, it was just like we felt that we had to lead by example, and there was a lot of stuff like there was just no one was saying anything, which was really hard.
I was getting bombarded at the time by so many messages from people just saying like, what's going on, and is Australia silent because they're guilty too, and are they not saying anything because they're a part of it? And
Like
yeah, it was almost like this, like it was quite awful because there was a lot of amateurs as well saying like, I don't know what to do. Do I keep competing? Do I not? Like
yeah,
the people that they looked up to weren't saying anything, and that's why we thought, well, we need to. And there's a lot of other
yeah,
people that did as well, but put information out there for those people who had no idea what to do.
yeah. It was some of the bigger names that weren't saying stuff. That was the thing that was getting to me. The people that people really look up to. Some of the smaller pros were saying stuff, but some of the ones that were just like huge names within the industry, and been competing and been face of the brand for a long time, and some of the coaches, some of the crown winners were just nothing was being said. No, nothing either side. Just Australia's different, and that was kind of it.
Mm.
Um, So anyway, you gave up your pro card, went down that track. It was, definitely scary, and a tough
Yeah.
moment for you, like a tough couple of weeks for you. And then obviously you went and decided to try IFBB,
I did
and
at that time. There
and
was no
you were
other
looking.
direction.
You're also looking into like what that meant. So what was the path of progression? Some of the things that really
Yes.
attracted you to IFBB. So what were some of the things that you looked at it and you were like, actually, this actually looks like a good gig. What was the difference there?
Well, the thing is, when I started competing, the reason I got into it was I loved the grit, I love the hard work, I love the challenge, I loved the being an athlete, and I started way back in the day in ICN, which is kind of similar to IFBB in a lot of ways, and it was that kind of athlete lifestyle and athlete mentality that I absolutely love. And without realizing it, but on retrospect, realizing it over the years, a lot of that had fallen away. More so once I got into the pro stage, and more so when I started going overseas in my competing. That's when it started becoming less about the actual prep, less about the hard work, less about the athlete, and more about what dress am I wearing? What bikini am I wearing? Does my hair match? Do my nails match? Am I doing enough on social media? That stuff started to come in. So,
Mm.
over the years where I had started to compete overseas and as a pro, because there was a good few years of that, I think my love of it had fallen away. And I only now realize it's because I had lost the stuff that I do love, which is being an athlete and being me. I'm a I'm not that glamorous, to be quite honest, in real life. I love walking around in my baggy track pants and, I can't be bothered getting myself dressed up on a day-to-day basis. It's not me. And I didn't realize I had started becoming someone I wasn't in the pursuit of this dream. So IFBB, even just the prospect of it reminded me of that, because it's a very high standard. It's the pinnacle, isn't it? It's, bodybuilding that's been around since the 1930s, 1940s. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's the Olympia. It is that top tier.
C-bum.
C-bum, God, what a legend, right? Like, it is the top level of bodybuilding as a sport.
Yeah.
And that had appeal, especially at a time when I was feeling quite lost. So I kind of wanted to bury myself into a prep, which probably wasn't healthy, but I was like, I need to feel like an athlete again. And I need to feel that, because my whole identity was just kind of crumbling before my eyes, which again probably isn't a positive thing, but it is what it is. When you've committed yourself to something for a decade, big part of you is going to just be attached to that thing. So there was that side of things. It offers a lot of career progression, and to get a pro card again is incredibly difficult. So in order to earn a pro card within the IFBB, you must compete in first a qualifying show. So you'll compete in a state qualifying show, which will allow you to get onto a national show. So already there's 2 shows minimum. You have to compete within the open category. So open is any level competitor, whether they're first timers or whether they've been competing for 4 or 5 years. So high standard of competitor. You have to win. You have to get to the overall.
So you have to win your height class.
That's right, because there's different height classes.
Yeah.
Thanks for specifying. Yeah, there's different height classes. So win the height class, get to the overall, where all the winners of that open category, so the best of the best on the day for each height class, compete against each other. One pro card is given out. That's it. And that
For the entire
occurs,
bikini.
Yep, for the entire of each category.
Yeah.
And that occurs twice a year. So it's very hard to get a pro card. Once you've got a pro card, you must win an open category again at a pro show in order to be able to qualify for
Do you have
the
to win
Olympia.
do they do overalls again at pro shows?
That I would have to double check and clarify. I'm quite sure you do have to just win the overall
Okay.
to
So
then
they
earn that
separate it by height
qualification.
at pro shows,
I have
and
to
then
check. That one I'm not quite sure on, to be quite honest. So
we'll find out when you finally go pro.
so that was the decision I was faced with, basically, because obviously FMG was announced after the final show of the year, which was incredible.
Which was after you competed twice already.
Which was after I'd already competed twice. So I didn't know that it was obviously going to FMG was coming. I had no idea. So I'd competed at states, and then we thought, why not? Let's go on to nationals. Let's get feedback. Let's find out if we fit in this federation. Now the feedback was all very, very positive, given the fact that we had 4 weeks to prep for the first show and 6 weeks to prep for the next one, to learn a whole new style of posing, a whole new federation, a whole new judging. It was very, very challenging, and I'll be honest, the scariest thing I've ever done in my life.
Posing was so different.
It was so different, and it was so much harder, because I lived and breathed WBFF. It was who I was. It was everything. I was hyper focused to absolutely manic states. Like, I knew everything about it and had been so in it for so long that I was like, that stage was home. And I was like, this is home and this is a piece of cake. And I know it. I know it. So going from being completely sure of yourself in something and knowing it, not knowing the results and not knowing where you're going to place, but just knowing the federation to a federation I was not familiar with and performing and competing in a way I was not familiar with, that was really hard. And
Yeah.
I really thought I was going to fail in a lot of ways and let down my coach and let down Jack and let down everyone around me. It was really scary, but the atmosphere was completely different. It really was that kind of like athlete mentality, and everything was focused around that. Like instead of going to registration nights and getting dressed up, which I loved and always have and still love, you know me, I do love to get dressed up in a gown and all that, you know. But Rego was you rock up in your trackies and your comfies and you do it. And it's like, to be quite honest, the night before my show, every other year for almost 10 years, I'd been having to get into heels and a ball gown and get dressed up. And I wasn't able to eat my meals properly or drink my water properly. And I was going to bed late and I was tired and my feet were sore. And it was just not an ideal setup for
And
then
then you were
having to.
waking up at stupid o'clock in the morning anyway to get your makeup done before the show.
Yes. So it's not ideal for peaking the best physique you can. So to be able to rock up to Reggio in the middle of the day in my trackies, get my tan done, go home. And I remember I was sitting on this couch with you doing some work, answering clients, had my feet up, and I was like, I can't believe I'm competing tomorrow. This is mental, because I'm so used to just being run off my feet and stressed out of my mind and all of the other things. It was just like, wow, this feels great. So I really loved that, just being able to really chill into show. And then the day was really organized beautifully around the athletes and having the athletes in mind, down to the fact that they had this great big pump up room where they literally kicked all the coaches out, because coaches are allowed backstage with their athletes all through the day, but just before you go on stage, they kick the coaches out, they shut the door, and it's just you to give you this space.
There's a separate room the athletes go into called the pump room, where the coaches aren't allowed to go into. So you've got the backstage where everyone sits and has all their food and they can put their feet up, where you can be with your coach all day while you wait, and they can make sure they peak you correctly and make sure you're looking good, which is again more beneficial for bringing the best physique.
Yes.
Something that you can't do in WBFF is go backstage unless you're a pro athlete. So you're relying on internet connection, photos,
yes,
better lighting. Very challenging.
Yes.
But then they go off into the pump room and you guys have your own space.
Where you can just get into the zone, which was really cool. I mean, I'm used to competing by myself because I've always competed in WBFF. So I'm used to not having my coach backstage, but it was amazing having James back there throughout the day. And at nationals, like, you know, he even organized a hotel for myself and Jess, who came to stay with us, who's just the Tweedledee to my Tweedledum, and I adore her. And we were able
Thing one, thing two.
Thing one and thing two. We were able to share that experience together and have, you know, have our coach like God there every second of the day and with us up until that final moment where we went into the pump room. So it was a really different, really cool experience.
Yeah, Lauren forgets, but I was also there.
Jack was there the whole time. Now, the thing is that people forget when it comes to competing, it's like, you know, us as the athletes, we talk about how hard it is. And yeah, it was fucking hard. Like, that's the hardest prep I've ever done in my life. I was tired. I was sore. I was downregulated. I was moody. I was depressed. Like, it was fucking hard.
You were doing stupid amount of output to bring it in.
We had to, because we had such a short time and we committed to this thing. So I was like, I don't regret it. I'm so proud of it. But what people don't think about is the impact that preps have on the partner, because, you know, the poor partner is living with us whilst we're doing this. And so, Jack, you'd just been through me being in a 16-week cut, but also obviously prior to that, like, I'd competed twice the year before. Like, throughout our whole relationship, I've pretty much spent 6 to 7 months out of every single year in prep.
The only time we were out of prep was when COVID stopped you prepping. Yep. And during that time, we couldn't exactly be a couple because COVID stopped us doing fucking everything.
Yeah.
So, so 2022, you competed at the back end of the year. You prepped for 5 months then. Again, that was a tough prep. I remember you doing 25,000 steps a day every day. During that prep. We had to hire a treadmill in the house so that you could hit your steps
and work at the same time.
Because so prepping then, which was, you know, it was tough because we were already going through some, we were already kind of trying to build up our relationship there, having moved up from the Gold Coast, moving up from Sydney, not knowing anyone here, working online, not really having much of a social circle. We just started building up a social circle at the beginning of that year. And then obviously when you get into prep, it's very hard to
I go
continue.
into hermit mode.
Lauren goes into hermit mode. And when you're like friends as like a couple, you stop getting invited things because Lauren's no longer doing stuff. So it was hermit mode. She did 5 months of that prep, finished in November. We had a couple days in England, came home, did Bali. That was our first holiday that we've had since we were together, and we were there for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
We still worked whilst we were away.
Yep.
Came back, had Christmas, and like January, February, March, we were just moving into our new place. I at that time was not in a really good place mentally. Like my mental health was pretty down. I was feeling pretty depressed, and it was about this time that I started looking into that and getting tested for low testosterone. And anyone that's seen my social media knows that I went and like sought out help for that and support for that, with the goal of basically being more upregulated. They found that like I had low testosterone, I had symptoms of low testosterone, so the doctor recommended me going on to testosterone replacement therapy.
TRT.
Looking back on it now, knowing more, it's actually quite a high dose. It's not testosterone replacement therapy now. It is definitely a cycle. But anyway, then like just as I was kind of like up regulating during that time, that's when you decided to pull the pin on doing Worlds. In my head, I was like, cool, we'll do well. Like, so before this, so actually coming back from holiday in November, we'd already spoken about, right, after that show, I was like, you need a year and a half to build. You need to go away and put on more muscle. You got the feedback from the judges. You're like, oh, the feedback's good. I should compete next year. So I'm going to compete. You're already convinced me. You're like, no, I'm not going to do a year and a half. I'll do Atlantic City at the end of the year. That gives me a full year. Then after that, I'll go to Worlds. And then after I do Worlds, then I have a year to build after that. And I was like, okay, so we booked Atlantic City.
Yes, we did.
Booked the flights for Atlantic City.
Because we also
booked the
had
accommodation
competitors in that show too.
And then so she'd already gone back on the year and a half break. She then decided like 3 or 4 months later, she's like, actually, we'll do Worlds this year for numerous reasons, because then I'll get my feedback on where I stand. I was like, okay, that makes sense. We'll do that. I can do that. We'll do Worlds, and then we're having a year and a half break, right? She was like, yeah, absolutely. We're going to have a year and a half break after Worlds. We'll do that. And so obviously we did Worlds. We also, like, I invested a lot of my life savings into that as well, and also into the trip. And we did Worlds, came back. She, even before Worlds, she was like, yeah, no, I definitely need to have the time off. I definitely need the time to go away and build, especially after the show. You realize that you were like
definitely not fitness.
Definitely not fitness. Definitely not big enough to be in fitness, despite being told by all of the international judges that you were.
And having a very expensive call with Paul and Alison, because it was the only way to get what I thought.
Say that.
It's the only way I thought I was going to get some like really proper kind of direction on what they want on their stage overseas. Because obviously up until this point, I competed in Australia and had always been given feedback in Australia. So I was like, well, what do Paul and Alison want? So I had a call with them, very expensive $700+ call. Obscene, but I, wanted the information. And
the takeaway was that you're exactly what they want for fitness. That you are these are the words, and we've got them recorded. You are the future of fitness.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect amount of muscle. Don't put any more muscle. We don't want you to get
fuller.
Just get fuller. Don't change your condition. That's exactly how. So Lauren brought that package. She came in fuller. She didn't get a lot leaner. She brought the same amount of muscle, and what was it? 9th in the end?
Yes, I think it was
9th in the end.
Yeah.
So she was like, okay, I definitely need to, I understand. I need to go build muscle. I need to do that.
Not because of their feedback, only when I stood next to the girls backstage and I was like, God, they are goddesses. Yeah.
You hadn't had the feedback yet. This was the week after the show. Like coming into the show, you were like on the show day, you were like, yeah, okay, I get it. More muscle. I think we were back a week. And Lauren was like, you know what? I think I should just do bikini at the end of the year. I'll just come in softer. Like I'm sure I'll do well there. I think I've just been in the wrong category this entire time. I'm like, no.
I was so determined to figure out where I fit. This is the thing. I wanted to know where I fit because I'd been bikini. And then I got feedback one show, which was you're too lean, put on size and go to fitness. Obviously, there was a few years off. There was COVID. I put on more muscle. obviously then the fitness happened, got all of that feedback. So I thought I was fitness, went to Worlds, found out I wasn't. So then I was like, okay, I'm obviously still bikini. So I was in this major battle of just like, where do I fit? I just need to know where I fit so that I have the direction to know where to go. Because after Worlds, I was, the dream was still fitness champion, but I knew I had so much muscle to put on to get to that
If
point.
only she'd listened to her fiance earlier and
I
spent some
still would
knowledge.
have had years and years and years
Yeah,
and
I
years
know, but
before I
you
got to
still
that level.
Anyway, you sold it to me as that, like, because I'm doing bikini, I can reverse up into it, and therefore I'll be able to have more food. I'm not gonna lose a lot of my time from doing steps. I'll be able to do this. It'll be nice and cruisy. I was like, okay, so I'll get my Lauren back, because when Lauren's in the depths of her prep, she hyper focuses on it. And to be honest, like, the amount of steps that you were doing, you had no option. Like, you were waking up in the morning, you were walking straight away from the get-go. You were doing steps, you went out for a walk, you'd be walking all morning, you'd be pacing around the house while you're doing your social media post, completely zoned into a phone, doing steps, out to a walk, come back, get her food, get to the gym, do her training, come back, do your posing session, like your posing practice, come back, crack into work, try and get through work, then be back out in the afternoon for more walking, come home, eat, walk around whilst you're eating. You'd be walking around until the moment that you got into bed. So like, during those preps, like, what it feels like to me is like you just feel invisible. Like, it was like, I said it to you, I explained it to you, like, it was like having a housemate.
And that's
You
how a
know,
lot of partners of people in preps do feel, like they're
can do.
invisible. Yeah.
It depends. Look, it all depends on how it's approached, and this was one of the things that I said to you. It's like, it all depends on the length of your prep, because I don't believe you need to do as many steps as you needed to do in these preps if you had longer to prep. Right? They were shorter preps. It was a 16-week prep. The first time around, it was, trying new approaches. You were trying to keep fuller for longer, so you didn't really start like cutting until closer to show than previous prep. So your movement peaked up at the end. And so obviously when we came home, you were like, right, gonna do bikini WBFF. I was like, I don't want to. You sold it to me. I was like, okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna do it. I'm not gonna tell you no. I'm just not gonna be happy about it, but I'll support you.
He always supported.
Yeah, I always support you. And then obviously it was like, actually, like, with everything happening, she's like, no, okay, I can't do that. Then it was IFBB. Then it was like the first show. And I was like, you were like, okay, well, we'll get to this first show, see if I like it. And then you got to that first show and you were like, I was like, cool. So we're done now, right? And you were like, oh, no, I'll do championships.
Nationals.
Nationals. I was like, no. I was pretty done by that point. We actually had a really serious conversation about that next prep, and wanting to get back to us, because we had a finite amount of time before. Like, I know as soon as you stop, like, it's not like you're back to life as soon as the show's over.
No.
There's that period of time following the show where you have to upregulate both physically, and then there's the whole mental identity battle, and that's another a couple months later after the show. So it's not like immediately show over and then you're back to normal. There's the reverse diet, then there's the upper regulation. Then my brother and his fiance were coming to stay. So I wanted time for us to get back to some kind of normality and have some time
to be a normal
together.
couple with both of us happy and healthy, because
Yeah,
Jack
exactly.
had been down regulated and then I went into a prep, so I was down regulated. So it'd been really years since we'd both been up regulated.
It essentially been like a year and a half of prep.
Yeah.
Of like, just like, not being disconnected.
Yes, that's the I think the good word for it. We were disconnected for a long time.
So it was starting to really play on my what I needed out of a relationship. And this is the thing. It was like all the decisions were made because I was like, I want to support you. I want to support you in your goals. I want to make sure that you get what you need out of life. But like with any relationship, you kind of have to have some give and take at times. So
yeah,
after those shows, got through them, and it was like, okay, now you've got a long break to build, because she still knows you need to build more muscle.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's put aside just the relationship side is so important, and that's the thing. Like, part of the break is like we say to our clients, you've got to give brownie, like gain brownie points or build brownie points. So if you're
With
someone
your
who,
partner.
with your partner, so if you're wanting to prep, you're essentially going to be sacrificing 4 to 6 months of your year, and that will have an impact on your partner, of course, because your libido downregulates, your mood downregulates, you're hungry, you're not yourself, and it does take anywhere from 8 to 12 plus weeks to upregulate and get back to normality, like Jack just said. Even though I've done 17 shows, I've been competing for a decade, post show is still hard. It gets simpler as we understand it, but it's still hard and challenging. And I go through the body, the body image and self-esteem things. I go through the challenges of what it is to be really lean and have to gain fat. It's not easy.
Mm.
It is hard, and it takes a little bit of time for everything to kind of settle back into place and for us to notice the hunger and the food obsession dropping and to get really comfortable in our body again. And then once we're energized and we're feeling like normal humans again, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I feel great. And then the comfortability within like the body fat settles in. Like when I get my boobs back, I feel pretty good. I'm like, yeah, I've got boobs again. That helps make it a bit easier. So we've just got to embrace what it is to have the off-season body. It just takes time.
That time between the November show in 2022 and the next show when you started Worlds, that period of time you were going into a hard build, and so like your diet and regime then was just as strict as when you were on
Yep.
prep.
Yep.
And ironically, it was in the opposite direction. So you weren't allowed to go out on as many walks as me. You were being limited from the
Yes,
amount of
I had
steps.
to limit my
So,
output. Yeah, yes.
and you were limiting your alcohol, limiting your nights
Going
out,
home early,
going
so I
home.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was lots of things around like life that kind of got limited during that time. And you were also dealing with some digestional issues and gut health issues
Yeah.
at that time as well. So it was
Yeah.
just like that 3 months off didn't really feel like 3 months off and being back to normal because we were both
It was
dealing with
just as
stuff.
regimented as a prep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a good break now. I'm
Yes.
excited. We're back,
Yes.
both feeling good,
Yeah.
healthy.
Yep.
Yeah, the libidos are both up.
Yeah, they are. We
Which
feel
is
good.
fantastic.
Yeah. So I would say last year was probably one of the most challenging years for both of us in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
because we were going through a lot of curveballs were kind of thrown at us with life, environment, health, with our relationship. It was a tough year, but it offered, I think, a lot of learning about what we want, what we want to achieve in life, and what's really important to us and our values, which is
Yeah.
a wonderful thing to bring into 2024.
We finished 2023 in a really nice way. So we still had my brother and his fiance come and stay with us, David and Hazel, and that was a wonderful couple of weeks. Whilst they were staying here, we then had to leave and go on our holiday. So that Atlantic City trip that we booked, essentially flights to New York, we still had booked. We couldn't cancel them, but what we decided to do is we were flying back via Vancouver. We decided to extend that stay in Vancouver. So we did a week in New York.
Yeah.
And then we actually drove up to Quebec into Montreal on a couple of days there. Then we drove back down to New York, flew over to Vancouver, had a night in Vancouver, ran into James Smith in the lobby of our hotel, which was so funny.
An old friend of yours.
Yeah, I've known James for like 5 or 6 years. We met on a holiday in Croatia that my brother had invited me on to go Ultra Sail Week. Met him there before he was really famous, but he got. I knew him before he was famous, but that was the year he really blew up. He was fucking killing it. But anyway, I hadn't met him before that. I hadn't even heard of him before that, and yeah, we spent that week together. We kept in touch. When I first moved to Australia, I hung out with him quite a bit. He was really welcoming. Despite his like increase in fame and things like that, he was always such a down to earth guy. Super nice, super helpful. Like invited me to loads of things. Really social. And like obviously we went about our lives. I remember, I left the country in 2019 because my visa expired or got pulled. Essentially, I had to go back to England, and I ran into him in a Nando's in Clapham, him and Dira, and I was like, "What are you two doing here?" And he's like, "What are you doing here?" So I ran into him there, and then the next time,
Gold Coast Gym.
Yeah, next time was like a year or two later. I've moved up to Gold Coast. I bumped into him in the World Gym Burley. It's just he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I live here now. What are you doing here?" And then finally, yeah, again in Vancouver, literally he was there for a night with Chris Wilkes. They're on their tour of North America
Yeah.
in that hotel. And I ran into both him and Chris in the lobby of the hotel at like 10 a.m. as I was going downstairs. Again, what are you doing? We were both only staying there for one night, which was
Yeah,
so
so
like
weird, isn't it?
it's weird. Yes, the odds of that is absolutely crazy. So we bumped into each other there, and yeah, Lauren's actually going to be doing an event with him in April,
Yeah, I got the
ironically.
CHFI live again
Yeah,
this year, which I'm so excited about. We did that last year and it was an amazing event. Just got a bunch of people together for education. So that's going to be really fun. That
yeah,
on the same weekend as the first FMG show. So
yeah.
Lauren's going to be doing a lot of flying back and forth between Gold Coast and Sydney.
Fucking brilliant, isn't it? So yeah, and then we went to Whistler, and
Yep.
it was basically the trip was an opportunity for Lauren to her first ever time seeing snow. So not
Yes.
only did she see snow, she tried skiing.
Yep.
We even got a powder day, which was really nice.
Oh, it was
It was
so beautiful.
magical. Whistler was gorgeous
Yeah.
pre Christmas because they've got all the lights up everywhere, all the Christmas lights. The snow conditions could have been better. It was mostly slush, apart from like one day where it snowed a lot and well, a foot and a bit. It wasn't exactly the Canadian snow conditions that I grew up on. I wanted to show Lauren, but it was good enough. It was beautiful. But the trip was really wonderful because we went to New York. We stayed in Brooklyn. We stayed in a couple hotels there whilst we were there, and it was really eye opening. When you travel, you really get to see how far your money goes
Mm.
or how far it doesn't go in our in our case.
Yeah. US dollar doesn't work in our favor.
No, it doesn't work in our favor. But just kind of like seeing the life that we want to live and the things that we want to do, and I want to have more experiences with you. I want to take you to more places. I want to go with you to see more things. I want to go to Japan with you. We want to go to New Zealand. We want to be able to go and not necessarily have to stress about every single dollar whilst we were there. And that was the kind of like hard part of that trip was, after Worlds, we were pretty fucking drained of money, unfortunately, because it was more expensive in the US than we realized when we were over there. And then obviously going back to the US was just as expensive a second time,
Surprise,
if
surprise.
not surprise. So it was a really good eye opener for us both to see like one, Lauren had a lot of changes in like your competing goals and what you want to do, which really focused you for the next year. And two, we also allowed us to realize what we wanted to really get out of our business. I think as a business, we've been doing well, but 2024, like we at the end of 2023, we were like, right, 2024 is the year that we fucking double down and we grow and we put a lot of effort into all aspects of our lives. So both, for you, it's like growth muscular wise, growing business, going after the things that we both want to do like long term. So you've got some really cool goals around public speaking and education that you want to chase. For me as well, I want to become more educated. So I'm doing a lot of the clean health courses in my morning cardio. We're also doing some business courses as well. And also you guys are witnessing us putting more effort into the podcast. This is something we really enjoyed from last year. And this allows us to kind of like really double down on that skill and bring you more episodes and get into more topics of conversation. I'm also going to be doing a little spin-off podcast, which is going to be more male focused, less comp prep focused, at male fitness and like, the male journey, I guess, of maturing and things like that, which, isn't necessarily for this audience, but, and just really getting into all the things that we really want to do. So 2024 we're really excited about. 2023 was a shit year, but it gave us a lot of perspective on a lot of things. And sometimes, and we say this with our clients, ironically, is that you've got to hit rock bottom. You've got to hit the point where you want to go, no more. This isn't how I'm going to live. This isn't how I'm going to deal with stuff. And that's what creates change and creates that driver for motivation, and then disciplines what keeps going. So yeah, it's exciting.
Absolutely.
Anything to add?
I mean, there was a lot there was so much I wanted to go into as well. We didn't quite finish all of the stories from the year. Like, there's a lot actually, but
Go
this
on
has
then.
been quite a long episode already.
Oh, we can go as long as we want. This is our podcast studio. We're not limited on time. Fuck it. You guys are with us for the long haul. 10-hour podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So
that's the wonderful thing about doing it from home.
Why? Some
I guess I
stories.
wanted to share, because I haven't been able to talk a lot about why I didn't just go back to FMG.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously after you competed in IFBB and then you'd done that, then we went to the WBFF Pro-Am
Yes.
November show.
Yes.
And that's when
Yes. So obviously, like, we had our team competing, which was amazing, and it was a really fantastic show. But within competing, because a lot of people might not realize this, once you have a pro card, you cannot compete with other federations. If you want to compete with other federations, you have to give up that pro card in order to be able to go on and compete with another one. So I'd already given up my pro card and been kindly told if I wanted to come back, I could. Now, obviously, I did not realize this at the time, because I did not know what was going to happen with WBFF. I was not planning on going to compete with WBFF ever again. I had detached myself from that brand. So in detaching from that brand, that obviously meant I was not going to do any WBFF shows in the future. I decided I wasn't going to do the Pro AM, and I decided to go on to do IFBB. So by the logic that I had given up my pro card and had gone and competed with another federation, I could not then go and get my pro card back. So upon speaking with Pauline and Ari at the end of the year, even though those who had WBFF pro cards and wanted to carry them over to FMG could, and even though those who had given up the WBFF pro card were welcome to basically get their pro card back within FMG, anyone who had competed with another federation in between that time could not. So basically, my decision wasn't quite as simple as just get my FMG pro card back. It means I have to go and re-earn my pro card within the new federation, because I made the decision to compete with another federation in that time. So I was then faced with that massive internal battle of, okay, well, which direction do I want to go? Because my family for 7-8 years had been all of the Australian WBFF family and all of the Australian pros, and they were the people that I'd surrounded myself with and competed with, and all of that sort of stuff. So it was a really challenging decision to make. But going off of the feedback that I got from nationals, the feeling that I had whilst competing with IFBB, I can see that there's a potential future there. Discovered that my structure and body is quite suited to IFBB bikini, which is awesome. I never quite knew where I fit within WBFF. I was always battling between bikini and fitness. There is the new category now, which is awesome, the bikini athletic category, which is kind of that in between category of bikini and fitness. It's that bikini girl who's a little bit more muscular and a little bit leaner, but not quite as lean and not quite as big as a fitness girl. Now, that's probably where I would fit, but given the fact that I'm now 31, I've been competing for a decade, I'm getting older, I still want to achieve my dream of earning a world title, competing on the stage with the best of the best in the world. I personally can't justify the time, health, and financial investment it would be to have to go and re-earn the pro card in not the same federation, it's a new federation, but essentially to get back onto that same Australian stage with the same pros I have been competing with for the last 6 years. And there's no guarantee I'm going to win that pro card either. The standard's amazing, and there's some amateurs out there who are absolutely fantastic. So I could spend a year, prepping, or I could prep for this upcoming April show. So I could have put my body through another prep, another quite a few months of impacting our relationship, impacting my health, the finances that have to go into it, and then there's no guarantee that I would win. So the risk of that would have been, okay, well, what if I don't win? Then that's another year I have to go away. That's another year of my life that goes by. And if I did win, great, awesome, but it would just put me back to where I was. And that could have had drastic impacts on us, our relationship. It's more impacts financially. It is more impacts on health, because when you do choose to compete naturally, which I have been for the last decade, I've been competing naturally. A lot of people also don't realize it does have a lot of impacts on your health as well. So whenever it comes to bodybuilding, either way, there's risks on your health. When you're competing naturally, you're going to see downregulations of hormones. You are essentially putting yourself into a starved state, a dieted state for long periods of time, especially for the female body, which is made to give birth. It's made to build life. It's going to fight back, and it's going to fight back hard. So over 10 years of competing and doing it naturally without having beneficial hormonal assistance, I've obviously now got low testosterone, and I do feel the impacts of that. Now, the other side of the coin is if you choose to use enhancement, yes, it can have benefits from a hormonal perspective, but there's also risks depending on the PEDs that are used. So there's always risks, right? So where I'm at in this journey now is it's understanding I'm getting older. If I decide I want to have children, that's something I have to start considering in the next maybe 4 or 5 years. But I have to basically decide now what I do with my body could impact that. So I have to be considerate of that. I can't afford to go what I felt would be backwards. I can't be spending time trying to get back what I already had just to go again. So that's kind of what made the decision for me. I didn't know where I would fit. I didn't want to spend the time trying to figure out where I fit. I want to progress and I want to be able to get to the top tier. I know I fit within IFBB. I know that I'm suited to IFBB bikini. I got incredibly detailed feedback off of national, so we know exactly what we have to do. It is literally just a matter of going and doing it, getting back on the stage. And the wonderful thing about IFBB is there's a lot of shows around the world, so we can hit a state show, we can hit a national show, we can hit multiple shows across um, Europe, Japan, America, and hopefully get that pro card. And in the same year, if we set it up correctly, get a pro card, hit a pro show, maybe even qualify for the Olympia. So that's kind of the journey. That's the goal now. It's like we're not going to get on stage until I'm in a position to be competitively from an Olympia standard, a pro standard. So it's time to build and build hard. Um, yeah, see where that takes us. Basically,
It's a big goal.
yeah, it's a huge goal, but it's exciting.
Something I thought as well when you were making that decision was, you could go to essentially back to FMG in theory, but it's still, as much as they've transferred all over these WBFF pros, one of the things that came out about WBFF in the whole controversy was how many people had won that didn't necessarily deserve to win. I would say, like, for example, at Worlds, top 3 amateurs got pro cards, and there's some questionable sometimes pros given out, overseas. And one of the things that, what some of the reputation overseas, actually, the reputation of for WBFF overseas was that the standard of athlete wasn't that good. The Australian standard of athlete was much higher than that of overseas because they didn't really hold them to a very good physical standard. There was a lot, they definitely aired on the marketability and beauty side of things more overseas than they did the physique. And so, like, within the bodybuilding community, it's not necessarily as well respected as some other federations, which are more obviously focused on physique. So one of the things that I thought was, like, well, you could go back to FMG, but the pros that have been brought over are of that standard of WBFF, which wasn't necessarily as well respected in the space as it could be. And so, like, going to IFBB, if you win an IFBB Olympia, you're not just known within. When you win a world championship within WBFF, you are known within WBFF and the people that support WBFF. When you win an IFBB world championship, or the Olympia, you're known worldwide amongst people that don't compete. Like, people know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is. Not very many people know who, well, I had never heard of Lauren Simpson before I came over to Australia. I'd never heard of Rachel Dillon. I hadn't even heard of Hattie Boydell.
That's interesting.
Nah, never heard of any of those people. But I'd heard of Arnie, I'd heard of Ronnie Coleman, and I'd heard of Jay Cutler. And I didn't follow bodybuilding back in England.
Yeah.
Knew these people because they were big within the fitness industry. I don't really know. Like, I didn't know of any of the male pros or champions that have won WBFF shows until I got into it with you. So in terms of, like, world renowned, which is definitely something that I know that you want.
Yeah.
You want to be the best, like, hands down the best. I always thought IFBB would be a better suited federation to you because FMG is, it's new. It's a baby federation. It's got to build up that reputation for itself, which means, and build up the standard. Like, it's going to be the first show it's ever had in April. It's going to be interesting to see if we can carry that standard across to all of the shows around the world. It's going to be so cool to actually see how it develops because it's very rare that you get to see a bodybuilding federation in its formation, in its infancy, and see how it progresses. And especially one that's as well ran as FMG is going to be because of the experience that the showrunners have. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see how these FMG shows this year play out. They've got a lot on the cards, so I'm really excited to see those, especially the ones in America, and see how they bring what they've been doing in Australia to the USA.
Yeah, I can't wait. And obviously, we'll be, as usual, at the Australian shows. So, anyone who is planning on going to the Australian shows, we will see you guys at registration. We'll see you at the show, and we'll be there cheering on our little squad.
They actually have a workshop soon that we're going to go to.
Actually, yeah, this weekend. Yeah, so anyone that is going to the Gold Coast workshop on Saturday, we will see you guys there. This is how you know that this is a recent podcast because the event has not happened yet.
The pressure is on now for me to get this posted before Saturday.
Yeah, literally. No pressure.
You guys will have seen us on Saturday at the most recent
1 month ago.
most recent workshop when this gets finally uploaded.
So we will be seeing you guys, if we have not already, at the workshop in Gold Coast. Obviously, we won't be at the other state workshops, but yeah, we're super excited, and obviously super excited for this podcast as well. We are not going to be having another 6-month hiatus. We are actually intending a couple episodes a week. That's the goal. And as Jack said earlier, like he's going to have a little branch off as well and have his own upcoming this year. So you guys have got a lot of content and a lot of our voices to look forward to.
Yeah. Actually, with that podcast, it's I'm really excited about that. That's going to also kind of transition into some of my other focuses this year. Definitely a lot of personal growth this year, but I'm trying to get more into a space of what I would have needed when I was younger, and focusing towards more men that are maybe feeling like they've focused a little bit too much on work, that they've kind of lost sight of who they want to be, trying and take some, it's a very feminine term, but some empowerment for these guys to make them feel confident in their skin, make them feel excited to take their shirt off at the beach. It's a bit of a weird one, excited, but basically just feeling good and confident with themselves, because I find myself, I'm able to throw myself more into my relationship, throw myself more into my work when I'm feeling my most confident self, and that comes into your habits that you're putting into place, your body image for sure, and that I've also got some plans for some community events for men as well, something, and that's kind of been born out of like my need for connection as well a little bit more in my life, especially I think about like friendship circles and things, like how do you make friends a lot of the time, and it's often you make friends through sporting clubs, or you make friends through work, or you make friends, or you've had friends that you've grown up with for years, or through your partner's family and friends, and that's how you make connections. But moving from another country, I don't have any roots here, I don't have any high school friends here. um the few people I do know, I've moved away from up to Gold Coast. Silly, but better quality of life outside of that. And Lauren's family are down in Sydney, so she doesn't have any like close friends that are like rooted here for, and I don't play a sport, so I'm like, how do I go about meeting other blokes to hang out with? And I've got a couple here, but I want to create more of that space for guys that maybe moved into state, or or just trying to find a new friendship circle, but one that doesn't revolve around just getting fucking drunk.
Yes, that's huge, right? I think that's definitely going to be an episode we do in the future, is talking more about that kind of like male experience and male mental health.
Do you have any goals for the year? Do you have any goals for the year?
I do. I have a lot of goals for the year. Um, Kind of along the same strain as Jack. Obviously, he's wanting to open up a bit more of a community space for men. And everyone who follows me knows I love education. So I'm getting a bit more into the education space, but I want to offer the capacity for more seminars and events, obviously starting off on the Gold Coast, because I think there's a great big missing link in the fitness industry for education. Obviously, there's some fantastic spaces out there to learn, but I want to have more of a, I want to eventually create a space for that. So PTs have somewhere to learn, or not so much PTs, just coaches in general, but more so from that comp prep side, especially for the female experience side of comp prep. I think that's a huge piece that's missing, is the psychological aspect of that. We know a lot about the physiological and getting the results, but I think there's less focus on the actual psychological impact that prep does have on people and how that needs to be approached, especially when, you're, for example, a male coach who is prepping a female client. You just inevitably will never have that first-hand experience of what it's like to be a female going through a prep. So I think it's going to be really useful to be able to offer a space to kind of help teach. That's probably a much longer term goal. I also want to create more of a community for competitors, because I know one of the number one things that we find amongst our clients, something we talk to them quite often about, is loneliness. They find the journey is quite lonely, and comp prep is a lonely journey. It's a selfish sport, but it doesn't mean you have to be alone. So being able to offer a space for people to connect a little bit more will kind of be a goal. So if you're on the Gold Coast, keep an eye out for training events coming up, talks, education, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I suppose that's my biggest focus, along with building a booty.
Solid goal. Real solid. I think we can all get behind that goal. Yeah, that's what I would do. On the back.
Slap the booty.
Yeah, exactly. It's a homemade drum kit. Cool beans. Yeah, exciting. So some cool things coming for 2024. This podcast will become a cemented part of your life, I swear to God. And yeah, like if you guys have any suggestions on topics, conversation, guests, that's the other one I wanted to say.
Yeah,
guests.
Anything you want to hear from us in general, just let us know.
Or, if you don't want to hear from us, equally tell us.
Also let us know.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys listening in.
Let us know your thoughts on this first episode, and we will be speaking to you guys again very soon.
Take it easy. Bye.
Bye.